would probably take an average 1-2 grinder playing his A game over an average 25-50 grinder playing his C game any day.
You're listening to the Mindset Advantage podcast. Each week, you'll get to peek inside the greatest minds in the game and discover what makes them successful.
Mental toughness separates those that can't handle the stress.
If you're going to treat it like an amateur, you're probably going to have amateur results.
Here are your hosts, Elliot Rowe and Adrian Talenchik Rousum.
And welcome to the show. This week we've got John coming on the show, John Van Fleet, also known as Apestyles, who's been an online crusher for years and years, coming on to talk about his career and the impact that mindset work has had on his success at the poker table. So Adrian, good to see you this week. All set for the show?
Yeah, you betcha. I'm looking forward to hearing from John. We've been around a lot of the same years.
Let's give John a call. So John, welcome to the show. If you could introduce yourself to our listeners.
Hi, listeners. This is, yeah. You know, you asked me to talk a little bit about who I am and what I've done within the poker world. And I essentially think that what I'm known for is, well, I'm a grandpa within the poker world. I was around pretty much in the beginning of online poker, and I've been beating the game consistently since then. So I think what I'm known for is just constantly beating up on the high stakes and evolving and adapting with the game. The thing that I kind of take pride in is I don't have that one huge score, but I am one of online MTT's biggest winners. I think I'll be corrected on that if that's not true, but I think lifetime I'm probably in the top 5 as far as profit made.
You say you don't have that one big, huge score, but checking out your bio and all the rest, seeing that you're a dinosaur like myself, I've seen a lot of 6-figure scores, a number of them. And, it's really different because in this day and age, we see so many of the so-called elite players that just kind of come and then you don't hear about them for a few years and maybe all of a sudden you hear about them again. But what do you think you've done differently that you're still crushing today?
Yeah, first of all, I want to respond to what you said about multiple 6-figure scores. I guess huge score is relative, but 6-figure score any day is big for anyone. However, playing my ABI, usually over this amount of time period, there's usually like a 200 plus score. But what have I done differently? I think just the ability to work and adapt and focus on the things I can control. And I do think that working on mind game and my temperament has allowed me to have some longevity within the game.
When you think about that, I mean, obviously, we've worked together. What made you think it's worth me working on my mindset now? Like, what stood out to you to sort of take that route?
Well, I felt like knowledge-wise, I was, I keep learning within the game, so I don't want to say that I had all of the knowledge. But I felt like I was kind of hitting peaks knowledge-wise, but occasionally I wasn't executing, especially deep in tournaments. For instance, I had a poker journal that I would write, and just to keep track of interesting thoughts, ideas, and typically bust-out hands and emotional states. And I kept seeing, call when I knew I was beat versus a reg who had 3-bet me a couple times, 4-bet all in in a spot where I didn't need to. It's like basically I thought that there were all these mistakes that were happening that were emotional based. To be quite honest, I had a little too much ego when I was playing. I would call myself kind of a dick swinger. I knew that I needed to focus on that. So I came to you to try to work on those areas that were almost subconscious for me, right? In fact, this is a little bit personal, but I remember the very first time I was talking about that, and we dug into my history of being picked on when I was younger, and how at first I remember I would go home crying every day, and then I was in 3rd grade, and then eventually I started fighting back, and then I got really big for my age and started looking for bullies to pick on myself, right? Which I'm not saying is a good strategy, but I could kind of see the same emotional reactions happening from when somebody 3-bets me 3 times. I'm going to show them, So I realized that anytime I'm reacting emotionally, I'm not playing my best poker. Hopefully that answered that question.
Yeah, more than adequately, certainly.
That's super interesting, to hear about when you're faced with aggression, you responded with aggression and how you noticed that in your game. We were talking a little bit about playing poker in the early 2000s and all the rest. I don't know what year it was that you decided that being a poker professional was your calling, per se. But if you could go back in time and, a 5-minute conversation, hey, John, what's up, with yourself that the day you turned pro, what sort of things would you say to yourself?
I don't think old John would have listened. I don't think 2000 would have listened.
You got to find a way. You got to penetrate.
I mean, part of it, I love that time period because poker was new and exciting and money was easy to make. I was young and I had money. But as I was talking with you earlier, I really thought that I made some really bad decisions with money. I thought I was like a rapper. I was always like spending way too much money at the club and things like that. If you made $100,000 or $200,000 a year in poker, that's not like you have a $100,000 a year job. You should still be living like you have a $30,000 or $40,000 a year job because nothing's guaranteed in poker. So what I would tell myself is first of all, to really watch my money, and that being flashy with money is it was fun. Like gambling and losing, winning $20,000 playing rock, paper, scissors, and then like losing it back at bowling. That was fun and exciting, but at the same time, it was silly. Not what I respect these days now that I've turned into Grandpa John.
When do you think that change happened? Because, I mean, it is less normal to see that behavior now, even with the wealthier players. Would you think it was a Black Friday thing, that everyone had a reality check, or was it something else that you think started to change the way the industry behaved?
I think it was youth and also the ease at which we came across that money. It felt like one money. And then, truly, I do think that showing off money is for the most part ugly behavior. But within this context, it wasn't like snootiness. It was almost like showing off our poker skill, right? So, I remember seeing $50,000 coin flips at the Bahamas and things like that. And I think it was just we all got together and if I was to really put my finger on it, the ugly truth is I think that there was just a lot of insecure little boys with too much money. But that being said, part of that was the fact that money was kind of just growing on trees and we barely knew what we were doing and we were just making so much money. So that's part of it too.
Overcoming insecurities is definitely something that I think many poker players face. But is there anything tougher in the poker world that you've had to mentally overcome as a poker player? And what steps did you take to make it through?
It's funny that you say that. I think that a lot of that crazy behavior on my part, and it was wild. Like I've got lots of good stories, and I actually don't know if I would go back in time and change them. But for me, I had a drinking problem for a while, and you can actually, it's really funny if you were to correlate, or if you had like a graph alongside, like the amount that I was drinking per day and how much money I was winning compared to when I wasn't drinking, they were definitely inversely related. So basically, when I was drinking and partying a lot, I would just blow money. And then every time I'd sober up, I would just, go on these huge upswings. For me, my journey within the last 12 to 15 years has been a lot about whether or not I've been drinking. So I haven't drank for the last 4 years. I actually ended up going to rehab in Vancouver about 4 years ago and haven't drank since. And I'm way better off for it. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily the way to go for everybody. But for me, I've found that if I take one drink, I don't really know what's going to happen. So I choose to not drink.
Do you think that sort of stopped a lot of the guys, who were there in the easy money? Was it that sort of behavior you think that means that they're no longer around? They perhaps didn't take the same route that you did in terms of looking after yourself.
I actually don't think there's that much of a actual alcohol and drug problem within the professional poker players. And if there are people who are actively in the midst of addiction, it's going to be really hard to do what you need to do to make money in poker. Because the thing about poker and why it's so tough to have success is a big part of success involves having a systematic and disciplined schedule around this thing that imposes no structure or system. So if you're also battling an alcohol problem, that's going to be really, really tough. Now, I do know a lot of really good winning players who smoke a lot of pot, but that's a whole different thing. And I don't think it's as unmanageable as like an alcohol problem would be.
With your sobriety over the last 4 years, can you give us a glimpse as to what a day in the life of John Van Fleet looks like?
Sure. I wish it was more exciting. Like I was, yeah.
I want you to tell the truth, tell the boring stuff, so that so that people understand it's not 24-hour party.
So like, on your average day, I like feed the homeless, rescue cats from trees, save people from burning buildings. I don't know. Just living like a hero. No, I think on a regular day, I wake up, I coach, I study, and I make sure that I do some of that work. And I work out about 5 times a week. And I do a lot of service within recovery. And for instance, I worked at a drug treatment center for free for a year, just because I think one of the biggest problems with online poker isn't so much the gambling part, but it's the isolation part, and not feeling like you're connected to other people. And also, it's not. I love poker, and it's fun, but it's not. It's definitely not a very benevolent job. I mean, you're just basically trying to maximize everything for yourself. So being able to feel like I was useful to somebody else really added a completeness to my life. So I do a lot of service work that way, and do yoga, things like that, and read, play video games, nothing too exciting. Although the occasional like hiking trip or skiing right now in Vancouver, etc. Nothing out of the ordinary.
It won't stop snowing.
What is the deal with this? But yeah.
Anyway.
You guys live in Canada, I suppose.
It's usually spring. It's March.
It's crazy. I'm from Texas, right? So I always think it's funny when people from Toronto are like, "Oh, we're visiting Vancouver for the weather." Like, I'm like, what? Because when I think of Vancouver, I'm like, this would be a great city if the weather were better. So it's a matter of perspective, I suppose. By the way, I think Vancouver's a wonderful city. I didn't mean... Yeah. So, yeah.
And in terms of the actual games, what sort of changes have you seen in MTTs over, let's say, the last 2 years? What sort of shifts are happening there that you have to keep working on to stay ahead of the curve?
Well, the evolution of technology, everyone's in their study groups. No one's sharing like they used to on the 2+2. The average player is way more educated than before. Still lots of leaks, and there's still lots of ways to win money. The high stakes are tougher than they used to be. There's not as many spots. Low to mid stakes are still really beatable, but you really have to be able to do things like target somebody's post flop check fold frequency at the high stakes to make money. You see what I'm saying? Like you need really specific ways of beating regs at the higher stakes that you don't like at the low stakes. People there are more gifts, I suppose you could say, and there just aren't any gifts anymore at the high stakes. There's exploitation, and there are players that are definitely losing at those stakes. But the game's gotten tougher, no doubt about it.
And if you were sort of talking to, someone comes to you and say, what's the roadmap, what's the plan to become a successful MTT player in 2017? What sort of roadmap would you give them?
Well, first of all, start in 2004. And
build a bankroll.
Yeah. Because I do think that a lot of who's at the high stakes depends on, who ran well in the beginning, to be honest with you. At MTTs. In cash, it's a little bit different. But yeah, if you wanted to get good from the beginning, I think that it's been so long since I started, but really it would be about bankroll management, starting low, watching lots of videos, making sure you have a poker group of friends. If you can, honestly, in the beginning these days, I would actually recommend a backing group that pays for coaching and gets you, a group affiliated with a group of other like-minded professionals. Doesn't mean you should stay there for life. Just that I think that's not a bad way to start from the ground up. But just remain focused on how to study, watching videos, learning how to use technology, etc. And in general, I'd actually recommend, I think, something like a 75-25 study to play ratio. Because if you're just... Wow. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just said wow.
Do you think that that's too much study or...
No, not at all. Not at all. It was more so. It should have been an internal wow, because I definitely struggle putting in the time to study. And I always wonder how do you have any recommendations for how I could change that mindset? Or were you always a good studier?
As far as changing that mindset goes, I think that I had a little bit of help, like as far as learning how to treat poker like a business and study. First of all, before it was poker, I was really, really into chess. And so I had kind of learned how to get better, but through study and focused study at a game. So that was helpful in getting better at poker. Then I met this guy, Chase, who at that point in time was making a living playing sit and goes and had all kinds of spreadsheets and introduced me to the websites. That showed me that there's a systematic way to do things. As far as making yourself study, I think, well, what does your current study look like?
Mostly it is a little bit with a coach and mostly hand review. For me, I even use Twitch as a studying mechanism in that, like, I talk through hands as I play them, or I will immediately do review of hands and talk about options I could have had at different spots in particular hands.
I actually do think that's a wonderful technique. I force myself to record. There's like hours and hours of unreleased video of me talking out loud while I'm playing, because I think that it makes me slow down and really think about my decisions. As far as how you can add to that studying, I think that you can have more focused studying with your hand reviews. Like, for instance, running through things in PO Solver or Cardrunners EV, even though it's a bit daunting. Maybe even getting a coach in how to use those things first. And then I think I'd also recommend a required amount of videos watched, like a goal, like just 1 hour, and try to and not passive watching, writing notes on things. And because I actually think that a lot of my success comes from video watching and then discussing with other good players that I was lucky enough to become friends with.
You mentioned just before the show, the sort of the way the last sort of year had gone and the turnaround that you had. Do you mind sharing that with the audience?
You asked me how I was doing, and what I said was I had just come off a year of breaking even / losing. Well, actually, I dumped a lot of money during WCoop and Scoop, and then it took me a year to come back. Then I just came out of it all in 1 week. What I spoke to Elliot about was how, for the first time ever this year, mindset techniques have helped me a lot get through it without it affecting me emotionally. And the great thing about downswings is that they make you focus on where you could be losing, right? So I spent a lot of time. I had lots of sessions with you, Elliot. I did motivational speakers during and while I was playing. I would meditate beforehand. I do a lot of meditation. And I did a lot of leak finding in my database to look at my win rates at different stack sizes. For the first time ever, even after a break-even year, basically, I was confident that I was playing the best poker of my life based on my win rates, etc., because I had spent so much time on mental game and on study. And usually when somebody says I'm playing really good and I'm running bad, that's a bad sign. But I truly believe this because I was confident enough in my process. I mean, there were certainly things I could have been doing better that I learned about through that process of studying, but my focus was on point, and I remained really, really positive while playing, and I enjoyed playing. Yeah, and part of that was just really, really focusing on what my mental state was like throughout playing.
And how did that feel, having that week? How did that start and then progress to being, quite an awesome week for you in poker?
What's kind of funny is that I just randomly I usually coach during the week, which is part of how I get to do so much studying. It's kind of cheating because I do so much coaching that's actually study. But I just decided to play on a Tuesday, and then I won the 888 tournament for high roller for, I think it was like $90K or something. And then that Sunday I played the party poker 2600 and won that for 70 something, 80 something, I don't know. And then I also won a $22 freeze out on Pokerstars. So I got it. So I got a triple crown. I think I'm most proud of the $22 freeze out because I one tabled that thing for like 4 hours and I kept my focus.
Always aware of ICM.
Oh, I was like stalling, folding ace king. No. Okay. I might make some ICM punts in those kinds of tournaments, but yeah. The funny thing is, you asked how it felt. It felt like a relief because, even though I was feeling confident in my game, it's not a downswing unless there's that little voice of doubt, right? So it felt like a relief and confirmation that yeah, I'm doing the right thing and I'm still playing really well. Oddly enough, like somehow along the way, I've somehow managed to disentangle my emotions from my results. And I only get emotional if I make a big mistake. And I don't know how I did that because I don't know. I mean, I get emotional about chess. I get emotional about Guitar Hero back in the day. But like for some reason I just don't get that emotional about poker anymore. And I think that that's actually something that's allowed me to stay sane playing online poker for a living for this long.
When you say you don't get emotional about poker, one of the things I think about first is like that you don't feel tilted, you don't feel rage. But do you still feel the jubilation and the happiness that comes from big wins?
Not really. I really, I mean, I do, but no, I've cut off both ends. Because I try not to get too excited when I'm playing either. It's usually kind of an adrenaline dump. I mean, for sure, I feel way better after a winning day than a losing day. But it's not like, okay, the first time I ever won a tournament, I won $2,000 in a $20 buy-in. I remember standing on my porch with my roommate at the time going, oh my God, I'm rich. And like, and I couldn't go to sleep that night. I remember also looking at the sunrise, and I was like so excited and so pumped that I had $2,000. Like bought my friends steak dinners the next day, and now that's just not the case for me. And I think that it's good that way because I needed to not have my internal states too messed with the inevitable up and downs of poker.
Well, I think with that description of the week you gave, I mean, if you'd been absolutely high from winning those two big events, the chance of you playing a $22 one tabling that same week would be pretty slim. It sounds like you just went straight back to business.
That's how I try to look at things. I just try to focus one decision at a time, not really sweat the money involved. Somehow I've been able to pull that off, like mentally. I don't know how I've been able to train myself doing that, but I would recommend it, and I think that it's a big part of the longevity. And one last thing I wanted to say about those downswings is my buddy Ricky told me that you don't make your money during the upswings, that you make your money during the downswings by not losing your head, by not losing more than you should, and by continuing to focus on the process.
Some excellent advice there.
You talked about still enjoying your poker, though. Like, do you find that poker, does it ever become a grind, or do you still always find enjoyment in it?
It's a job that I love, It's not like when I first started playing where I just loved playing. It's all I wanted to do. I can kind of take it or leave it at this point, like meaning that if I don't play for a couple weeks, I'm not like freaking out. But man, because I work so much and think so much about poker and always have new ideas to try out, I really enjoy playing and I enjoy experimenting. And I have to admit, I love the puzzle. I love the mind game. And a little bit of my ego also loves to, I don't know, I hate to say it this way, but like I kind of like to crush, I
like to be the bully.
Yes. It's funny because like in my regular life, like I really don't think that that's me. I think that I try to not be super aggressive and I really care about how people are feeling. But sometimes I feel like when I play poker, I jump into this other mindset where I'm just all about maximizing EV and dominating the table, and I'm ruthless. And I think that's okay to access that part of me. It's not how I act in the rest of my life, but it is the zone that I get into when I'm playing.
But beware the Apestyles.
It's moderated dick swinging now?
Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe a little bit. Maybe there is still just a little bit of that, no doubt.
but it's well placed.
But yeah, I do have fun, but I don't have fun because of the all-ins. I have fun because of the puzzle aspect, and I have fun because I like being good at what I do. That's really what it is, the intellectual challenge as well. I remember because I had a little moment where I was like, man, I'm not sure if I want to do poker anymore for a living because I think that it might be too self-serving. And like I said, I volunteered at that drug treatment center. I was I lived there. I actually was the house manager. And I found out really quickly, actually, that playing poker for a living is pretty fun. and that as far as like being a counselor or working at a drug treatment center goes, I don't want to get paid for that. And I really love what I do. So it actually gave me an appreciation for poker as a living because there are so many other great benefits and it is fun. It's really fun.
Awesome. And a question we always like to ask guests, and you've been in the industry for so long now, we hope you have a good one. What's the most extreme example of tilt or chaos you've seen either in your game over that period or a story, you know, people that you've seen mindset-wise at the table?
I mean, a lot of different people have, you know, different like, you know, broken different laptops and pieces of equipment, which I will never get, because that just adds to the tilt. What's the worst tilt that I've ever seen? Man, I know I have one. I just don't know if I want to put some of my friends on blast.
Don't have to name them.
I'll say I can't. I honestly can't think of anything other than just like guys who like root really hard for themselves and like they're a bummer to grind with. Actually, that I'm just gonna make a general statement. Like, you know, I was grinding with somebody who was on a downswing, and like every single pot you heard about it, right? He's like, "Why, God? Why?" And I'm like, and I started noticing that like I'm rooting for him more than I'm rooting for me because I'm just like I just don't want this freak out to happen anymore, and you know, just that kind of stuff. And I've definitely seen stuff broken. And if you're like that, I know it's really hard to control, and I know it's not what you want to be like, but maybe go to Elliot or something because it's not good to be like that. And it's really harmful for the environment that you're around and the people you're playing with.
At least go to another room. At the very minimum.
Like the chillest person that I've ever grinded with was Steve Gross. I remember he would just kind of like, you would never hear a thing from him. Every once in a while, you just kind of hear a giggle. He'd be like, huh. And then and that's about it. That's about it. He was someone really fun to grind with. Yeah, but I've never really seen. Give me an example. I know we got to go in a second, but give me an example of some of the craziest tilt you've ever seen.
Adrian, you must have some.
So I can put my friends on blast. I mean,
or yourself, you know,
or myself. Gosh, it's so embarrassing though, right? Like when you look back at yourself and you see things that you did in earlier days. But I remember I had a Dell laptop. And when I bought the laptop, they offered me this warranty. And it was literally, you could drive your car over the laptop warranty and they would replace it. No questions asked. And so for me, that was always in the back of my head was like, well, I can break my laptop and it'll be replaced within the week. So there was never any like further retribution. It wasn't throwing good money after bad. And I definitely went through a few laptops. Now this is a number of years ago, but it's so embarrassing.
Okay, I have one about myself that's actually the worst one. Okay. I was sitting next to Stevie444, Steven Chidwick, and I had a bad beat and I meant to punch myself in the lap. I was just like, ugh, but I punched myself in the nuts. And I was like, and that is actually my worst bad beat story of my own. Where
it must look strange for Stevie as he watched you.
That sounds like that could have been curative.
Yeah, because that might be where some of my problems come from. Anyway, that's one of mine. My very last one that your story reminded me of is I had a friend who punched their laptop screen and broke it, and they went to the Apple store. And we're like, it just did this. And they were like, no, as you can see right here, there's a point of impact. And they were like, no, it just happened. It just happened. Why would I punch my laptop screen? You know? So, yeah.
Did they get a new one?
Yes, they did, because they were just really, really insistent.
John, I mean, obviously, you know, you're a coach as well. We had Rob on last week, and he mentioned working with you and things. Where can people find out about you if they want to talk to you about coaching? You
know, I think the best thing to do would be to either message me on Pocket Fives 2+2 Twitter or look me up on Skype. And I have a personal assistant that manages all of my coaching bookings. So if you wanted to talk about coaching, and my personal assistant has all of my pricings and describes a little bit better what my coaching involves, which is really targeted, also really concept-based and a little bit math-driven as well. So anyway, if you like what you heard, I hope to hear from you, and message me on Skype. Yeah.
And what we'll do as well is on the podcast page, we'll get some links together so that it's easy to find John if you're looking to find him. Well, thanks so much for coming on and sharing a bit of poker history with us, and giving me a free plug as well. Always appreciate it.
nice to finally meet you.
Yeah, it was wonderful. It was great talking to you guys. I had a good time.
Awesome. Cheers, man.
So great to hear from John today. You know, it's so interesting to hear somebody else who has essentially a conventional job sometimes alongside poker playing. Because for me, occupational therapy and poker have gone hand in hand, despite being so totally different minded in careers. You know, in one, you're trying to earn money and take from people, and in others, you're definitely just trying to give and improve their lives. So it's neat to talk to somebody who comes from a similar background.
And do you think that balance is what makes it work so well? Because they are both so extreme. You know, one's so kind and one's so poker, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, there certainly is a push in the poker community to give back. And there's lots of ways to give back, which is kind of what John was able to show us today.
Great to hear, just how professionally he takes it as well. So a ton of good advice there. And I've heard a lot of poker players who've worked with him say that he's an excellent coach. So if you're struggling at all with the MTTs or just want to reach the next level, definitely worth giving John a shout. So Adrian, where can people find you in between the shows? In between shows, you can definitely find me on Twitch. Twitch screen name is TalentChick. So twitch.tv/TalentChick. I'm there Mondays, Fridays, Saturdays. But do just click the follow button when you're there, and then you get notified when I go live. Excellent. And anyone interested in me or my things, check out pokermindcoach.com. We've just starting an academy on there where you get 2 webinars a month and loads of content. So make sure to check it out. Okay, guys, we'll see you soon. Take care.
You've been listening to the Mindset Advantage podcast. To get future episodes delivered to you automatically, make sure to subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcasting service. To get any resources mentioned in the episode or to listen to past shows, visit pokermindcoach.com/TMA podcast. Thanks for listening.